Alrighty, that is the go live key. Slide some things around here. Not solitude. Oh, the usual audio checks. I'm gonna bump gain here, I think, a little bit more. Alright, listen, that's good. Towards the, you know what, I think I'm gonna switch shares. Who do we have in the chat here? The viewership is going up and down on my end, but that usually means that a bunch of people are just now, tuning in. Alrighty. So we got Brigadine. I think it's Brigadine. Brigandine? No, Brigadine. I shouldn't be inserting an N there. Murid? I'm gonna call you Murid. John Daker. Or is it John Dock? I always hear it pronounced John Docker. I don't know why. Can I trust my own memory on that? I don't know if I can trust my memory on that. There's a fellow. Six of Swords. Always good to see you. There's a fellow with Cyrillic. No, I'm too rusty to pronounce that properly. Red One, nice to see you yet. No, I have not played Shadow Dark yet. Pronounce it however you want. Alright, I'm gonna go with Docker. Jonathan Rock, hello. Constantine, okay, we could go with that. Alrighty. The other thing I'm gonna do is now that I've more or less confirmed that the audio is working properly as intended, I'll put these other headphones on. N10 QA notes. Nope, that's not what we're going with. Ooh, upcoming project. We're gonna slide over to something else. And let me find by man. This is definitely not by last modified. What the hell, dude? God, Google Google Drive is just it's never not broken. It's my favorite. Anyways, I'm also going to be there's that again, just creeping in for no apparent reason. Gonna connect to my Discord chat. If you are in my Discord, there it is again. If you're in my Discord, go ahead and hop into general. I'll see you in there, and then I can drag you into the appropriate channel if you want to join in. Red One asks, "What's a BrOSR?" We're gonna get to that. been on everybody's mind for a while now. Well, Stevens, good to see you. All right, give me 30 seconds. Jesus, what was that? Okay, so are you folks ready to get started here? We have a few different topics today, few different things to discuss, as you can see by the lengthy title. Joshua Konopke, nice to see you as well. All right, so got a few things on the docket for today. We have BrOSR campaigns. We have a discussion about patrons, or a patron call rather. A discussion about patrons and Brownsteins will be in the BrOSR campaign section. Then we have campaign prep for my actual campaign. Oh, geez, a bunch of you hopped in the server all at once. Oh my god. All right, I'm down for it. A bunch of people are probably going to ask you if you're here for if you're here for D&D, and that's fine. Ba, 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 ba. Jeffro asks, did you miss anything? Nope, we are just now getting started. All right, folks, decide. What do you want for dinner? Do you want brisket or chicken and waffle? You want brisket or chicken Alfredo? Decide. We're going to start off with a conversation about BrOSR campaigns, or my upcoming patron call, or my campaigns. Cool, cool, cool. I think I've given the appropriate roles to everybody in there. Okay. So, I'm going to pull up my notes here. And I'm also going to make sure that. Let me turn that back on right now. Yeah, there we go. Excellent. Excellent. Going to move over to OBS here. Should capture. Oh, no. You're not supposed to be doing that. Aha. What new from template? Let's make this. We're not really looking for a generic canvas. Yeah, that's a little better. Cool. Well, this is chicken and waffles from Whiskey Cake. Joshua Konopke. That's awesome that you know where I went there with my girlfriend about. Was it yesterday? No. It was Saturday. So I think it was April Fool's. Chicken and waffle was the first. I think on our first date we split chicken and waffle, and I was pretty happy with it. It was a good second day in Texas. Yeah, I just had a brisket burrito. I just had a burrito made with brisket and whatever other spare meat I could find. So we're good. Okay. So this up here is relevant. We're going to ignore that. We're also going to confirm that one of my pens works here. It's so tasty, and the cake for which they are named is also delicious. Let that brisket in the waffle iron and see what happens. That sounds. Not if I'm shirtless. Brisket sandwich from Bucky's 2 days ago. I only had Bucky's once. All right, yeah. I think we have mostly everybody filtered in here. Give me 2 seconds. Because my pen appears to be missing. A specific pen I use for specific purposes, like appropriate note taking. Alrighty, and then I think we got folks who are. Nobody's jumped in the chat yet. We are fine. Monday Night Raw. Okay, so where do you folks want to begin? Should we begin with an explanation of like what the hell BrOSR campaigns are exactly, or what the BrOSR is specifically? Or is this going to be this is going to be a little bit sloppy? Brigadine says, "Never heard of you. Shut up." Okay. Gonna put that over. We don't need that nearby. I think most people are here are pretty familiar with it. Alright, to give you folks a basic primer, it is the small movement around playing mostly AD&D 1E Raw, dedicated to discussing. There might be a few folks here or not. I have something of a weirdly expansive audience for as much as one can be for or can have for somebody with like less than 500 subs. Small movement about mostly playing AD&D 1E Raw, discovery with secondary objectives for discovering the origin of fantasy gaming, discovering the proper campaign play that led to the best heights of fantasy gaming, and another second order consequence, I guess a third order consequence, examining its impact on other games and other areas of the hobby, or other territories within the hobby, you could say. Oh, they say joy of wargaming guy led you here. Oh, that's funny. Constantine, by the way, do I know you from Fiddleback server by any chance? Good, that does work. Perfect. Nope, I'm new. Oh, fascinating. There's another Constantine back there. Bring her to my drive, Gelatinous Rube. Spellbook, running the game. This is gonna go in running the game, I think. Tracking resources. Oh, that's right, I did. I never made that script. You guys are gonna be in for a treat when it does come out. Yeah, it sounds like there was a recent loss, unfortunately. Okay, so I've been setting up my I have not been setting up my Chilmus Valley campaign. I've been setting up the instructions for my Chilmus Valley campaign. Welcome to the stream, folks. I'm Gelatinous Rube. When I cut this live stream up and release it as a video, or for public consumption rather, this is probably going to be the start of the stream. And I was going through my early campaign prep to see if there was something that I could use to explain to people in the module of Chilmus Valley what it was about, how to run it properly, and how to run it improperly, I guess. or how to run it as intended, how to make it how to live up to the campaign's heights or the module's expected heights, and then more conventional play styles, and sort of compare and contrast the two next to each other. More or less so that people understood. First of all, I had a few different objectives. That folks, in fact, I might as well write these down. First up was making folks understand that the grand campaign style exists in opposition to conventional play practices. I want to be careful. I wish I could type faster on this. You know, my noise gate is up sufficiently high. Maybe I could do that. Maybe I could get away with it. So first up, make folks understand that the grand campaign style exists in opposition to conventional play practices. Second, of course, was to define grand campaigns. And by extension, patron play and or Brownsteins, which is a second subject upcoming. Yes, I do need to get my review of How to Win at D&D out. Probably this week. I'm planning on 2 video releases this week, and then 2 live stream cuts. So that should work out nicely. So define grand campaigns, by extension, patron play and or Brownsteins. It is good. No, I appreciated it. There's some material in there that I will probably crib for or steal for the purposes of making this campaign introduction. The defining brand campaigns provide explicit guidance. This is the most important one. Explicit guidance on how to properly. See, there's very few people who don't steal from Jeffro. I still don't know what. Yeah, you can't give Jeffro credit. I think I'm probably the first. No, I'm not the first YouTuber. I keep forgetting. John beat me to the punch way, way, way before this. Insofar as giving Jeffro credit, because John started YouTube far earlier and far better, mind you. Provide explicit guidance on how to properly seed a grand campaign map and manage factions within. Now, Chilmus Valley, initially designed for 5th edition, I hope to release it for other games. I think it would be a shame if the only edition I made this for was 5th edition, which was more or less wasted on it. I think that this game should exist for 4th edition. I think it should exist for 5th edition or 1st edition. I would like it if there was a grand campaign module that existed for 1st edition, because of course, 1E, sort of the pretense of BrOSR campaigns, welcome to the stream, folks, is that 1st edition was designed for a style of campaign which involved multiple different groups, or multiple different rosters of player characters, with different allegiances, different backgrounds, different priorities in play, interfacing with different factions that had their own unique win conditions, unit rosters, assets, places of interest, POIs. And I already said win conditions, so I guess I could just cap it there. I should have listed win conditions last. So maybe actually I'll define it here. So grand campaigns. I don't know why this is center justified, but who cares? We'll get it later. You should check out Nightwolf Inn for a straight 1E setting. Maybe I'll add that to the research pile. As Jeffrey will tell you, I've been building a research pile for. When did we meet? Like 4 years ago. So it's a bit too high at this point for me to add more stuff to it. So grand campaigns, multiple rosters of player characters forming independent groups, interface with unique, with maybe not unique, disparate backgrounds, motivations, and priorities, interfacing with, or what's a good opportunity? What's a good for whatchamacallit? First time I insulted that, yeah. When was the first time you insulted me? That was back in the days of something about plot. AD&D is still evergreen. It is the well from which all dungeons spring. My definition of sometimes when folks discuss fourth edition, this is related, I promise. Sometimes when folks discuss fourth edition, I mention that fourth edition. I can sympathize with why some people think that fourth edition is not a game of D&D or not an edition of D&D. Because I think it's the only edition that would have, if AD&D never existed, I think 4th edition is probably the only edition that still would have been made. But as far as every other one is concerned, yes, they all in some way trace their roots back to AD&D, or some corruption thereof. 4th edition is a new game, Pathfinder 2nd edition is a new game, 13th Age is a new game, Lancer is a new game. All these OSR really just reinventing the wheel. Oh, if we were so lucky. If we were so lucky that the OSR was reinventing the wheel, as opposed to introducing us to a new triangular shape that they promise not is better, in fact, than the original wheel, because you can use it to plow your fields and move items at the same time, move things or move cargo around at the same time. But in fact, it is unfortunately worse at both of those tasks and solves a problem for which, or touts itself as solving a problem for which the wheel was already produced. Disparate backgrounds, motivations, and priorities interfacing with factions with their own unit rosters, points of interest, and win conditions. That is our definition for grand campaigns. I suppose I should probably, well, I'm going to check in with chat here first. Does this make sense to everybody so far? Fourth edition should have had a VTT. It was dead on arrival, partially because it didn't have a VTT, which is quite unfortunate. But it works great on Fantasy Grounds. It works fantastic on Foundry. I wish Roll20 sucks. So what can be done about that? It's so much fun. So we should probably start drilling down on what makes a grand campaign, besides this actual definition. Like, what does it mean? Multiple rosters of player characters. So we look at, okay, this is sufficiently annoying to me now. Hello? There we go. When we talk about multiple rosters of player characters, we mean that player characters start in disparate locations with somewhat do I want to say randomized? I don't think I want to say randomized. Start in disparate locations with only partial control over their availability for play. That seems pretty good. Yeah, I think that is good. Player characters can't always team up with their desired with the desired play group. We could just say desired group. Player characters start in disparate locations with only partial control over their availability for play. Player characters can't always team up with the desired group or specific player due to training, downtime, barriers on the overworld map, etc. Yes, travel, probably just say distance. Distance, barriers on the overworld map. So if I'm saying distance, I should definitely say obstacles. Obstacles provided by the scenario, etc. Resources, maybe, but usually less so. What the hell? I'll include it. No, I think that goes under obstacles. Okay. As for factions, tiers of play. Well, actually, I don't know about that yet because Choma's Valley is a 8th level. The starting level is 8. Oh, Constantine. Okay, Constantine. This is totally fine. These are exactly the kind of distractions that I want. What happens when two independent groups of PCs end up meeting at the same time in space in Jeffro-Gygaxian timelines? Sorry if the question is stupid. I really don't think it's stupid. Somebody in the Aaron the Pedantic Discord server asked me this question, and I think maybe I brought it up, and it was sourced from Twitter, but I can't remember the exacts. But I had a argument over what would happen if, say, one team was, if we say, like, I'll delete this soon. We'll say that team 1 gets to a dungeon and loots it over the course of 2 weeks. Team 2 to a dungeon, the same dungeon, and only 3 days, and loots it. This will be relevant. What do you think happens? Well, Team 1 has already gotten there and looted it. It's somewhat unlikely for them to get to a dungeon that's 2 weeks away, right? That's a lot of encounters to blow through, but maybe they have some solution that makes it so that they can travel for 14 days, get to a dungeon, and still loot it in the same session. And then another group gets to the same dungeon in only 3 days. But it is possible through things like, let's say, teleportation. Maybe they get to it instantly. And so now you have some kind of conundrum where you have to adjudicate, why was Team 1 able to go through the dungeon and loot it if Team 2, according to the calendar, would have gotten there sooner? And this is going to collide with the question that you actually asked, and with the upcoming factions definition. Because a feature of grand campaigns is adversarial, player versus player activities which do not usually involve direct confrontations. Yeah, Jonathan Rock says, why loot the dungeon? It's worth answering because it is attempted as a gotcha. Jeffrey Johnson says, whoever played the session first in real time got there first, per Gygax. Yes, that was my answer. The opposition raised was that, supposedly, if we were playing a true BrOSR style, then allowing that this would fall under player versus player. And if player versus player is supposed to be active in the campaign, obviously, Team 1 should have the loot disappear from their pockets, and it should appear in Team Two's pockets, even though we already have procedures to evaluate this. Like, my answer to this was, okay, Team 1 gets into a dungeon, they loot it over the course of 2 weeks. When Team 2 gets there, even though they went there in the earlier calendar, what I would say is, I would use the dungeon restocking rules. And what this would allow me to do is to repopulate Team 2's dungeon as if that were the original dungeon. And I could say that based off the repopulation tables, right? Team 2 gets to loot they get to loot the dungeon. I get to say that in 11 days, when Team 1 gets there, the dungeon that they got was the result of the dungeon repopulating. So the dungeon already has procedures to handle this. But the opposition raised, like I said, was that if Team 1 does not get their treasure taken away, it means the BrOSR does not believe in player versus player activities. Okay? Player versus player. I'm dropping words again. That's very annoying. Player versus player activities. Because after all, if one person can't beat out the other team and retroactively Thanos snap the rest of their treasure away, then that means that there's no player versus player activities. And I think I didn't make this argument at the time because it was such a weird objection to me that I was gobsmacked. I just didn't have an answer ready. I hadn't thought about it enough. So it was a good gotcha, which I hate. I hate that so much. But many months later, it did come to me, the answer that, listen, when we talk about player versus player in Halo or in World of Warcraft or something like that, the game is not... We don't have a player versus enemy environment in Destiny where there are mechanics, there are rules, you have equipment, you have class features that allow you to, provided that you engage in player skill and engage the mechanics correctly, defeat the enemy characters. And then when you go into the Crucible or into Gambit, if you go into a player versus player activity, the game then switches away from the mechanics to where each team individually starts deleting lines of code to see who can delete the enemy team from the game fast enough. Faster than the other. No, player versus player is within the context of the rules. It's within the context of the play space. It is within the context of the campaign, and only the campaign. It is not the use of weird, stupid rules interactions, or not even stupid rules interactions that you might expect to come up in campaign play, phrased in a stupid fashion, such that it would produce something impossible. Right? That's not the point of the campaign. Getting more, cool. Getting some information on some new fun. This excites me. Player versus player controls who to... Yeah, okay. So this was the assumption if Team 1 doesn't get their treasure taken away, it means BrOSR doesn't believe in player versus player activities. But no, player versus player activities is facing armies against one another, rolling on the assassination chart, rolling percentile dice for assassination, or for successful chance of assassination, however you want to phrase it. It's attempting to steal specific pieces of loot of which everybody is aware and exist currently in the campaign world. It is not attempting to move backwards in time throughout the course of the campaign calendar to stop an event or stop player characters from getting some loot in an isolated dungeon in the future. That's not player versus player activity, which is why we're going to go back here. Is our definition of a grand campaign circling back multiple rosters of player characters forming independent groups with disparate backgrounds, motivations, and priorities, interfacing with factions with their own unit rosters, points of interest, and win conditions. So while player characters start in disparate locations, factions also start in disparate locations. With preset, I'm going to start planting some flags here. This will tie into the patrons discussion. With preset alliances, enemies, we'll just say. Preset alliances, hostilities, hospitable points of interest, and win conditions. Diplomatic connections might be, yeah, I do like that. With preset diplomatic connections, hospitable points of interest, patron relationships, and win conditions. Each faction has a single NPC who controls each faction. And here's our big flag planting moment. To maintain proper what's another word for fair? Yeah, also lose conditions. I find that sufficient for I find win conditions sufficient for that, but I do appreciate it. In BrOSR alignment matters. It does. That's one of the functions of diplomatic connections. It's one of the functions of alignment is setting who you're allowed to ally with. Maintain proper... What's a good word for fairness? Jeez. I'm thinking of an A word for some reason. Maintain proper... It's not a... Where is it? Oh, well. To maintain proper fairness in adjudicating the actions of each faction, a significant portion balance to maintain proper balance in adjudicating the actions of... Nope, I found it. Okay. Proper impartiality. To maintain impartiality. Proper was the thing that was screwing me up. To maintain impartiality in adjudicating the actions of each faction, a significant portion of the of said factions must be controlled by different people or preset tracks or or activities must be or by or tracks set by the scenario in advance. There we go. All right, so factions also start in disparate locations with preset diplomatic connections, hospitable points of interest, patron relationships, and win conditions. Each faction has a single NPC who controls each faction. To maintain impartiality in adjudicating the actions of each faction, a significant portion of said factions must be controlled either by different people or tracks set by the scenario in advance. BrOSR is topless AD&D. Yeah, this is the Beef Brigade. You may have heard of us on Reddit. I'm shirtless right now. Why aren't you? Okay, so does all this make sense so far? What questions do you guys have? Oh, buddy. You want to lay down the backpack? Here you go. Perfect. And we're going to start moving to specifics now. Talk about NPC tracks for non-player controlled factions. So if you're not going to hand something off to players, because you cannot have a proper... What are you moving for? You cannot have proper uh, independent factions if they're all being run by the same person. It doesn't exist. I don't care who you are or who you think you are, what kind of cool actor or ref or game designer or whatever you think you are. I don't care if you think that you are a plural system, that you have multiple personality disorder. You will never, never run a Brownstein as effectively on your own, as effectively as so much as little as one other person added to the equation would run it. Even to you could be the absolute paragon, the absolute height of knowledge, character acting, a genius level DM that's created a living fantasy world. And you would still, the campaign's actions and faction, the way that your factions acted in game would still be inferior to how as little as two people would handle it instead. A thespian, yeah, excellent. But if you don't want to, sometimes you don't have access to more than one person. Sometimes you find yourself annoyed with the other people that you would normally go with. So what you have to do in advance is you have to take or as the only acceptable alternative. It's inferior, but we provide it sort of as a stopgap against, well, maybe you wouldn't trust other people at your table. Yeah, maybe you wouldn't trust other people at your table, but maybe you would trust the scenario designers to do it in advance. Set up in advance what each faction began doing. And that's where these tracks come in. That's where campaign events and the way that different factions act or sort of get scripted in advance. Now, the question Brigadier asked was, how do you keep the program tracks dynamic to the developing game state? This is why it's an inferior option to your particular to just having somebody else run the faction. But what your option really, what are we doing? Red, we'll explain that in just a second. Your only option is to have a planned state and have relationships somewhat randomized by the dice. So we're going to say that the Witch King of the Hyboreal Court has a 1 in 6 chance with allying with House Marta, which has a 1 in 6 chance of allying with the Cragmarite Empire, which has a 1 in 6 chance with allying with the town of Brownlock. And that's as close as you can get to impartiality. It's so much more interesting, though, if you were to have somebody run each of these factions, or run the factions that compose these 3 different campaigns. You're setting probabilities at each branch point, yes. So what happens otherwise is then the Witch King, all the factions of the Witch King and all of his bad guys, and the drow houses of the world below and all their bad guys, and the Pragmarite Empire, the Dwarven King and his empire to the east, and all of his bad guys are all opposed to the players at all times. And they present a unified front, even though none of these factions are supposed to be universally aligned with one another. All of them will present a unified front against the players, which is the only thing that matters. And it's unacceptable. It's bad. So here I've begun setting up this is going to be a little bit of a transition. Here I've been setting up a campaign timeline. Chilmus Valley includes three main. The module of Chilmus Valley essentially includes three main campaigns, and I wish that I had a different word for campaign here, and maybe somebody in the chat can help me. But it has three main tracks of events that are going to happen as time goes on. Now, what you might notice is that they're not all happening at the exact same time. In fact, there is a stuttered introduction or staggered introduction of each track of events into the game, into the campaign. So we have January and a huge tracts of land. Jeffers says that John Mollison is a pro at setting up these multiplayer situations in a solitaire mode. Those videos where he allowed his viewers to vote for which proposed strategy each faction or unit followed were pure genius. Yes, Matt Colville wanted to do something like this in the... Oh, who's rolling? Oh, neat. One of the new players is there. Forest? Nope. Aha, here we go. Welcome to my campaign map. So these are all 24-mile hexes. They are, or the campaign map is 50 hexes wide, 100 hexes tall. I need to update this. I assure you, I do not prep more than you. I don't know if you I have no idea, by the way, how much you actually prep, if at all. But I can assure you, it's probably not more than I do. It's very rare that I actually prep for a session, which is probably bad because I'm running 5th edition. John Doctor says, this is pretty genius, and with real time. If the players do something to disrupt those plans, you have time to readjust faction actions based on the new situation. Yeah. Pro is probably the best word for it, because he is. Yeah, there's a lot of players. As far as independent groups is concerned, or are concerned, rather. Yeah, so if we look down this campaign track, we have ice begins forming between the Twin Peaks. About 2 months later, we have the first hexes frosted. The campaign mechanic of King Zafane of the Witch King of the Hyboreal Court is that for each one of these hexes that gets frosted, he gets more power. When the hexes get frosted over, they use different encounter types. They use different encounter tables, which are more dangerous. There are negative environmental effects, which there are normally not. And it makes it, of course, much, much easier. Enemy armies or units begin taking attrition within the frost. And it makes it much easier to take over towns and cities on the campaign map. Now, the players have access to resources to stall the frost's advance, or to sort of hem it in. But it's more or less only a temporary solution. They have multiple different solutions, but most of them are temporary. And of course, if an army sweeps down to any of these particular resources, right now, they're apparently undefended. So there's nothing stopping, other than some attrition damage that the armies will take from coming down here, to start taking these places over and actually use it to further the frost. So that's one campaign going on. Another campaign Another track of events is if you look over at these little gray spots on the map, we have this is a biome type called Underdark Spires. It's places where the world above has sunken into the world below. And the plan of certain drow houses, one of which the players have actually allied with, it's not one of actually they have not allied with one of the drow houses attempting to do this, but some of the drow houses are attempting to sink additional sections of the world above into the world below. Yes, suddenly spiders. So one of the players set up a keep nearby, allied with one of there's a drow city called Ashtaisi, in which there's 3 major drow houses. And the red will answer that question in just a second. They allied with one of these drow houses to basically try to increase their power in Ashtaisi and hopefully take over their own city. And with allies in the world below, they can more easily prosecute war against the other drow houses, some of which live up here, some of which live over here, in the world below, who are trying to sink hexes across the land. And the players already came across one place where they were doing this. I'm going to start like displaying it on the overworld map. But these are a lot of different factions. I've explained, or rather, I have called out so far one faction, which is see you, Jonathan. One faction which is player controlled, just a keep with some units by it. And then let's see here. I said that there was a city with 3 drow houses within, so that's 3. There's 2 other drow houses, that's 5, so that's 5 factions alone for one specific campaign track. As far as the Witch King, the guy who's controlling the frost up here, he's got how many people? They're not properly factions, they're more like NPCs. Some of them are factions. He's got a faction because he is an army. And he directs some of the other NPCs to do things for him. So there's him, there's his right-hand man, who also controls an army. There's what used to be his right-hand man, who also controls an army. That's another 3. And I am not going to run all of these properly. I'll give you an example. I haven't been advancing the frost along the specific timeline, because I keep forgetting. And I need to just go back, and I'm going to make up for it in a hot second here. Maybe I'll do that on stream. That would be funny. But yeah. So I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to do this game justice if I run all these faction heads on my own. And yes, in response to your question, Red, this is in 1-to-1 time. If I go into my, for proof for this, if I go into my calendar here, I have a custom calendar. I open up a note here. It says 4:23 session start, 3:31 session start, 3:28:23 session start, 3:24, 3:17, 3:11, 3:3, etc. So back when we were only having weekly sessions, it was going about once per week. I think these 2 were on Saturdays and these 2 were on Fridays. And then I think this one was probably on like a Tuesday or something. No, a Tuesday? No, I think it was a Monday. I think I just had this session ready that day and said, hey, who wants to play? We got a bunch of other people in the server, and we just got a new crop of players, which were apparently experimenting with their character sheets as a reason. How did they do? These are all player characters over here. Those are folders dedicated to player characters, and then a few more down here that have not been added to folders, which I need to fix that. Para's been here for like 3 months. I need to give her a folder. But yeah, so that is... shut this off because I don't necessarily want to get copyright struck. So that is the essence, more or less, of a BrOSR campaign. Once I complete this one little last requirement, For a proper BrOSR campaign, without which you do not have a BrOSR campaign, I need to give people control over these different faction heads. Like there's not just these three specific. These three are the big like main thrusts, and I organize them together because they all involve armies and units in particular. Like this guy is going to be coming down. I think he starts way closer to the bottom of the map. I think yeah, he starts over here. There's a cursed. How far I can zoom in here? God, I can't wait to redo this map. It's going to be fantastic. There's a cursed tract of land here, which is where a really fantastical war was fought out across about 96 miles. Just dug trenching lines. And there's a little keep over here. The Dwarven general is going to start here. For each, he has to move past some cursed land, but once he does, if he does, or he is going to, but we'll see exactly what his player decides on. Once he starts taking territory over here, his unique faction mechanic, is that he gets to have extra Gelatinous Valley patrons, perfect. Is that he gets to have extra units. So here is my document. It needs to be updated and will be updated very soon. Because I'm basically putting out the call now. Is I need people to run some of these patrons. I need people to run some of these faction heads to interact with the players and start moving independently across this overworld map. There are other locations here. There are 7 elf cairns. There are 7 druid groves hidden across here. There are 3 mage. There are 3 mage colleges on the map. They have their own alliances. So we're going to switch back here. All right. Anybody here? Who has questions so far? Is the definition of a proper BrOSR campaign more clear to people at this point? This is going to be the subject of an upcoming video. Brigadine, this is 5th edition, but let's see here. There's no mass combat rules. There's no exploration rules. There's no spell research. There's no real faction mechanics in 5th edition. So this is, I guess, a 5.5, because in the module, as we were building for 5th edition, and we said, we want to support mass combat, we want to support exploration, we want to make something that works properly. It has to support mass combat. And there's actually a video on my channel where I explain the mass combat system of Gelatinous Valley. And you would not necessarily need to run it on your own, but there's quick play, and then there's grand battles for the mass combat system. So if you want to if you and whoever you're facing off against want to get extra involved, you can, or you could use what's more or less a quick resolve system. It goes by very quickly. Probably about an hour's worth of play, and it's a fun way to waste time. So, Julip says campaign blog. Oh, we have a bunch of fun questions in here. John Docker says, Elf ruins, perfect places to desecrate. That's the trick, John. They're not ruins yet, but with you, they can be. Sign up for the Hobgoblin Army. Sign up for the Invading Fae Army today. I'm going to go to ashcreativity.com. If you go to, let's see here, my most recent sessions were March 11th. Jeez. Okay, so I have a post coming hopefully later tonight about not the prior 3 sessions, but 3 sessions that we had during the... I had a burp. I really want to burp. During this month, Wolir. I think basically these 3 sessions, 2 of which were relatively boring, the 3rd of which was fantastic, best one I've had so far. But I'm going to copy this over into the chat. There's the campaign blog. Okay. Jeffrey Johnson says BrOSR patrons or get the fuck out. Exactly. You cannot have a BrOSR campaign without it. You might be able to have real D&D without it. That was something that Jeffro and I were arguing about. And I understand his position that for the upcoming book, he more or less has to. Your position is that you have to go along with exclusively things that were done, or things which are like no more than a step removed from things that were done, provided they were in the rule set, to keep the explanation airtight. I think that sucks. I think my arguments earlier today that we've had with Casimir Urbanski, that we've had with people on Aaron's channel, not Aaron specifically, because Aaron is one of us now, but people that we've argued with on Aaron's channel about whether or not patrons are raw, as to whether or not we can count them as being raw. I think that you can. I think having a Braunstein implies that you're going to do this. Let's see here. Are you looking for fully autonomous patrons to run all their domain stats battles, or could you accept different levels of time investment? I could absolutely accept different levels of time investment. The two things that I'm looking for, and we will get to it in just a second, are moving armies across the campaign map and having and engaging in a little bit of diplomacy with player characters and other patrons. The interactions with players are by and large going to be gated by me. Only certain players are going to be able to access patrons based usually off their living standards. I found a way that I was so happy when I found a way to incorporate the 5th edition rules for living standards in an actual game, because nobody pays attention to them because they have no impact on the game. But in something like this, I can say, aha, you're only going to have access. You can only hope to get quests or an audience with certain groups of people, provided that you are living in like a high-class area or living a high-class lifestyle by and large. Okay, so I dropped my campaign blog in the chat. Red One says 5e or 80. No, it's 5th edition. Constantine asks, how do you approach the organization of mass battles in 5th edition? We will get to that. Brigandine says, many shared elements with Dubs in here. Absolutely. I've been watching, keep in mind, I've been watching all of the BrOSR campaigns for pretty much since July 2020. And studying them and seeing, okay, what's going on here? What's going on there? Who's doing what? Why is this working? Why is this not working? Why is this something that might work, usually, but isn't working here? And just kind of taking things from a design perspective. Why is it that one-to-one time is cool? What are the effects of one-to-one time on the game? Just kind of observing. Yes, Brovenloft, I had probably the least investment in, or the least observation of, because 2022 was a little bit of a wild year for me. Yeah, I did not have consistent internet access. Red One says, let's fucking go. We got a decent mass battle system. Yes, for 5th edition, finally. Jeffro says, diplomacy-type interactions between about 5 to 8 faction players are really easy to adjudicate and probably add the most bang for your buck to the campaign. Absolutely. And it's made better by the fact that I'm about to get an additional referee or 2 at least to run special locations for places like the Glassblowers Academy. This is a mage college down south. It's handy for players. It's probably a really good starting location for new players. I might release a video. I'm thinking about, okay, I'm going to get back to that. Because I have to finish this other thing up first. Okay, so I have a document here called my Chomas Valley Patrons. And I have, Human Realms. We're not as worried about these ones because they don't have as many starting assets. We have the Cairns, the White Orchid. The Cairns are hidden realms between the real world and the woad, obscured by magic and thriving in their magical realms. This regrettably opens them to attack from hostile forces within the woad. So while the big bad evil guy, the Witch King of the Hyboreal Court, needs the frost to advance to efficiently attack human settlements. The elven cairns are like half here and half in the wildlands, half in the woad, half in the primeval realms. So he could just skip right over and start assaulting them from there. So I need one person to, for instance, run the White Orchid Cairn and decide whether or not they're going to buckle under the assault of the frost and end up aiding the frost, because that's mechanic for the frost to spread faster from this region. Any hex that's touching the frost every week gains a frost count, basically gains a frost counter. That's what's going to happen. So I need one person to run that. I have two dwarven factions. This is where the discussion of campaign mechanics comes up. This guy is the main I almost said bad guy. He's the main NPC of the Kragmer's Revenge campaign, and the this campaign just activated. So now I'm in a state now where I could request a patron for pretty much every faction on the map. This disgraced general of King Kragmer III has lost not one but two armies across his years of campaigning. Past feats and honors demand he maintain his position, and the king has begrudgingly maintained tradition. Opportunity to grant the old warrior honorable death presented itself when General Istwabar drunkenly bet he could retake territory in Samaid in the king's presence one fateful dinner. Okay, so we have availability. One player so far has expressed interest in controlling this faction. That was ages ago. If you're interested in this, please do message me. Campaign mechanic. Istrobar does not need to pay for the upkeep of units sent by his homeland or recruitment, but he has very limited gold to spend and will not be provided additional units unless his homeland judges his performance honorable. So the campaign mechanic is this guy has to take territory if he wants additional units. But the benefit is he doesn't have to pay for them. He still gets a little bit of gold from like basic income from attacking. If he sacks a village or whatever, or if he defeats another army in combat, he's going to get some gold, and he could then spend that on like mercenaries if he wants. Cool. He could spend that on mercenaries if he wants, to help him take additional territories, but he's limited. Like he has to expand, or else he's screwed. Forces. He starts with command of an old fort and an adjunct trading company. He has few but very experienced troops. His location we already showed you earlier. His play style description is here. Aggressive expansionism, attempts to vassalize other factions, and frequent use of player characters should the patron want to succeed. One thing I mentioned was, let me show you this. There's a 96-mile long trench of cursed terrain where past battles between this faction and a bunch of and the united armies of the realm battled here and did so viciously and unleashed such magics upon the world that the battle is replayed pretty much every single night. This poses a little bit of a problem. Not every single night. Sometimes it's once a week, sometimes it's once a month. But if you start bringing units over, it starts early. So this poses a problem for those guys, and who would you call to fix a problem like this? You have a mountain pass, can't go around it, bunch of cursed terrain here. Who would you call to fix this problem? Sure, everybody can guess. There's that. There's Hold Hrothgar, available and active. They have lots of these guys who are not like main thrust combatants or factions have druids, necromancers. Yes, there is one. There are 7 druid groves, some of which are active, like in a state where you could start using them to attack people if you wish. As for necromancers, there is a mage college. Uh, ba, 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 ba. all the way over here of Necromancers. They're their own faction. If you want to, you could either run that as a patron head or you could run that as a DM. So you could have students go on adventures in your mage college if you want. It's pretty good. Some of these isolated locations, mage colleges especially, are pretty good for this. This is one of the subjects that I mentioned earlier, is that I think I'm going to switch a few videos to campaign advice for discussions on how do you run a BrOSR campaign? How do you run a campaign? How do you run a grand campaign? How do you run campaigns like we do? And I think one of the videos is going to be kind of styled as anti-advice. Don't start off in a do not start off in a tavern. Don't start off in a tavern. Start off in a mage college. Start off in a dungeon. Start off in a dungeon in which you are the inhabitant of, which is kind of what I think of mage colleges as being. John Doctor says, I would call the church to uncurse the land. It's not a bad option. You guys chat for a hot second. I need to recover my voice. Perfect, perfect, perfect. Yeah, back to the patrons. Please, if anybody wants to run any of these, this is going to be a lot of fun. So we have Hold Hrothgar. These are dwarves. These are friendly dwarves. They have a large number of forces, but they're never permitted to send out more troops than their garrison maintains, and they can't reduce their garrison below a certain number of forces. So they're you could send guys out, but you pretty much have to keep like at least half your guys back as to protect your actual hold. And if you want, you could dig for treasure and money into the world below, so long as you do not dig too deep or too greedily. I wonder what that means, and I wonder what might happen. I wonder who would you would call if you did in fact dig too deep or too greedily. We have the houses of Ashtaisi here. We have House Kralis. So if you were to start with these guys, for instance, they have unique buildings, allowing them to exert extra dominance and capacity for trade. They're focused on intrigue and sabotage. Their goal is to increase the faction's percentage of ownership over the city. And this is an example of a house where if a patron started off with this, they would start off with an alliance preset and a hostility preset. They would be default hostile to the other two houses of Ashtaisi. But they would be allied with one of the player characters, because this particular player has 3 characters in the campaign, going back to folks with multiple rosters of characters. You would start off allied with the folks who own this, which would be particularly interesting because recently you're going to find out in the newest session report, which I really want to get out tonight. But the players actually killed the faction head of House Kralis and resurrected her in the same session. There's a little bit of an oopsie, but it did mark the start of war between that faction and yet another house that lies up north. So our house there. Not as many details here, not as many details here. Blade of Eternal Midnight, yeah. So not as much for those folks. We have Valyria the... Let's see here. We have some folks from the Clover Courts and the local Fae, or of the Summer, who the players need to ally with if they want to stop the Frost. We have, let's see here, Valyria the Songbird, not yet active, but may be quite soon. Campaign mechanic, they're able to teleport around the map and amass a large army just by winning battles. They have a legendary unit. Valyria herself is a pretty formidable combatant. She's a hero. You may muster unique units to your roster. and you will gain additional random units at no cost, so it's a lot of fun. The playstyle doesn't care for territory, but is instead free to roam around the real world and the world as a horde. So if you like playing hordes and like Total War, Warhammer, this is a faction for you. Lyle, Guardian of the Reef. This is another situation. Actually, this patron is active now, thanks to the player's actions. This is very recent. Campaign mechanic has a unique method of territory expansion, meshes well with player allies, is immune or uniquely suited to deal with several factions. So the thing about Salile, if I scroll up here, and I'm going to address what Jeff said in just a second. The thing about Salile is she's all the way up here. We mentioned earlier converting certain hexes into Underdark Spires. She can do the same thing, except it's a unique variant of spires. It's coral as opposed to just rock. She can sink hexes into the world below. She doesn't care what happens to the world below, but it expands her territory, and it's immune to the frost, and specifically stops the frost spread around that specific hex, which means I need to redo this section, which is a little bit annoying, but what can you do? But what she needs is for player characters to deliver these little seeds around the campaign map, place them correctly, and then guard them while they actually sink into the world below. Okay. Jeffro said on multiple players per character, I think it's important for players to maintain a separation of concerns by having their stable not be friendly to each other or even be on different sides. Maybe. Maybe. I'm a little bit less concerned. The interesting thing is I think that concern fades once you're running a really higher level game. And here's my argument for it. Once I think players are well suited. I think a player that has multiple characters is well suited to make one or two of their characters advance way faster than you would normally expect by like dumping gold into one another or dumping special resources into one another that accelerated their progress such that they would have an artificially low death rate in the early levels. Once you get to a higher level game like this, 8th level, I think the concerns, and this could also be an artifact of the scenario design. I don't know if this is I don't know if this is actually the case. Right? There is an alternative explanation for this. But my initial thought was because this is a higher level game, because the players are not as concerned with leveling up, though they like it, of course, they're a little bit more concerned with resources that they have at their disposal, like magic items and armies and such, that they're much more likely to align naturally in a way that first level characters might not. Yes, I'm looking for first level for more players to serve as Lords of the Realm. Exactly. However, yes, he warned against accelerated progress in the preface of the DMG. And so I think that accelerated progress is something to be worried about in the initial jump or in the initial seeding of the world with player characters. But I think as you gain levels, I think it's way less of a concern. However, against my point is that I've set up this scenario with pretty obvious bad guys. No, I don't think it's more of a skill issue. I think your incentives change. I think once you've gotten to a higher level game, I think your incentives aren't as obsessed. I don't think the incentives are weighted as in favor of just desperately trying to gain a level or two. I think once you've already gotten those levels, it makes sense for, okay, there's one guy over, I have 6 units. I have 6 units over here. You have 8 units over here. And the bad guy up north has 20 units. That's a pretty, if those two people want to ally, There is no reason, sans alignment, there is no reason for the referee to say no. There is reason if the referee, if you're like both in a dungeon at level 1 and one person is looking for a free mule, right? But once you get to the point where people have actually earned their assets and such, I think you more or less earn the right to be a free agent with all of your player characters once they're higher levels. But again, against my point, there's a pretty big, obvious bad guy up here who has broadly speaking not made any attempt at diplomacy with the players. So in something where there's more variety in if there was more variety in hostilities as far as the factions were concerned, who knows? Maybe different people would be more opposed to one another. But right now, the person with 3 player characters does have all 3 of them working together, and just uses them to expand their goals across a campaign map. So we'll see how that goes. Yes, Lyle Guardian of the Reef. We have Kings of Fane. He needs to be detailed. Minor factions, Nixie Kingdom, Goblinoids, Groves. Yeah, there's Druid Groves down there. But yeah, so I'm looking for people to run some of these patrons. And part of it is going to be expanded in campaign diaries that I'm planning. And then we're gonna do a series. We're gonna because right now my channel is chugging along pretty normally. I think the only time I really get a huge bump in viewers and subscribers is when there's a specific current event that I can attack. Like that's algorithm that's already hooked. There's a subject that's already hooked into the algorithm that I am well suited or well positioned to address off the bat. So besides that, all we have is just content that I put out on a consistent basis, right? 2 videos per week. If I do 2 videos per week, I get a few subscribers pretty much every time, and then bring things in. Man, I wish James had 1+ years of experience refereeing this kind of gameplay right now. It's funny you should mention that. I already do. So if I were to bring over, uh, I'm gonna make sure that I have the correct thing set here. Ooh. So this is my first time running a campaign. This will be my first time running a campaign with patrons. But this is not my first time running a Astral Tides. This is somewhere in my archive. Damn, this is far back. It's also in the Adventurers Guild. They were actually planning their sessions. This goes back for some time. I've been running campaigns, or I have been running campaigns in another part of this world for about 3 years ongoing. And this was right about the time that Strongholds and Followers came out. And we're going to switch this one off. Ooh. This is back when I was using Worldographer for all of my maps. There was if I actually, you could kind of see it on the map. God, the zoom is not going to be kind to this. Yeah, you could definitely see it right there, right? That was the gun mill of a player named Nitro, who started the campaign in an attempt to become a gun runner. And these folks were these folks were running airships focused campaigns all around the map. This is on a separate continent of my world. So I did something similar to what I'm doing now. I had multiple rosters of player characters. I had multiple different folks working together. It was a little more, it wasn't running with one to one time, which was a huge problem, believe it or not. One to one time, the reason I took to one to one time so quickly is because it solved a huge problem that I had in all 3 seasons of my West Marches campaign. Was you can hear my voice failing now. I'm gonna be careful. Red One says, do a bunch of fearmongery how SJWs are ruining your hobby vids. No, man. Lowbrow, but it works sadly. No, God, I'd rather shoot myself at this point. I made a new Twitter account so I could go reconnect with some of those folks because they had certain things to say about and had certain values as far as the tabletop games are concerned that I found valuable. That I don't really found, but like nowadays we're called the BrOSR, but I by and large don't find talking with the OSR productive. By and large, I don't find it valuable because they don't think of it this way, but they are playing at design when they don't know how to do design. Whereas with folks nowadays who are more of a new school, not even necessarily new school, just like the Twitter RPG space, a lot of those folks are not talking about design. They're not designers. They might not necessarily know that they're not designers, um, but they definitely know that they're GMs. They definitely know that they're game masters. And so they'll discuss things like good role play and good game mastering in a way that I actually find kind of handy. I love Ginny D. I really like, I especially like Matt Colville's earlier videos. Um, I think I like Matt Colville's modern videos too now, even though I often disagree with him. I think he talks like more of a story gamer than he actually runs. And of course, anybody who likes fourth edition is cool in my book. But I think so. The OSR is a crowd of people who talks about game design without actually knowing anything about it. Who you have to have such ridiculous arguments with them. Just saying like, oh yeah, there are commonalities between video game design and RPG design. There are probably some universal basic principles of game design that apply equally well to each one. And the fact that one of them is in a different medium probably doesn't matter all that much. Why have video games advanced for 50 years? Whereas in 5th edition, I don't know if you guys know this, there's no charge or receiving for charge in 5th edition. Why is that, do you guys think? It's in a video game, you don't get the progression where you just keep losing features after features over years and years. It's very rare. Um, Everyone on Discord is a game designer. Yeah. No, I have a little bit more stringent qualifications for this than most folks do, I guess. Jeez. So you folks probably get what I mean at this point. So when I'm talking to the new folks, I start from the position that they're probably not going to know what I'm talking about. If I start talking about game design, they're going to have different precepts. They're going to have different like it's just not going to be their field of expertise. But if I talk to folks, if I talk to those folks about game mastering and like, yeah, there are certain things where like game mastering to them is scenario design. And they're just talking about like, all right, well, what makes good encounters? What makes certain things satisfying? What are some tools to make sure that I'm still putting in magic items and still putting in rewards for the players that we would expect a real game to have? I can have conversations with them about that. Whereas if I talk to somebody like Casimir Urbanski, If I talk to somebody like the tutorial boss of internet shitlords, I can't even. We have no common ground. My appreciation for 1E and my appreciation for game design, despite the fact that his crowd has 3 letters of my crowd, we have nothing in common. Our games do not resemble each other. Seed Fable 2 to Fable 3 for a downgraded gameplay. Yes, 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 yes. Okay, I have my own personal example of this, which is Titanfall 2 versus Apex Legends. I think it's by and large a pretty obvious downgrade. There's a few things that Apex Legends does right, or interestingly, combined with ease of access, that makes it uh, obvious as to why it's more successful than Titanfall 2 was. But as far as gameplay, like just obviously a downgrade. So it can happen in video games, or Morrowind to Oblivion, or hey, Daggerfall to Morrowind. I played Daggerfall more than I played either of those two games. Oblivion to Skyrim. Yeah. No, no, listen. It does happen, but it is uncommon. I don't look forward to Elder Scrolls 6. Yeah. It's just going to be a. That's actually what Todd's been working on this entire time. It's just the D&D virtual tabletop for 6th edition. So finally, your two favorite worlds collided. Your two favorite games. Welcome to hell. So that's the deal. Just to give a recap of the stream, now that my voice is fading, I am looking for folks to run faction heads in Shilmas Valley. Those of you who recently joined my Discord server, just give me some info, give me a call, start chatting me up. I'm probably going to make a new channel for handling independent factions. And of course, my viewers and my patrons, patreon.com/RubeJelly, get first dibs on it. Speaking of my Patreon, I have new monsters, new mechanics, and we're going to release a bonus video that is Patreon exclusive at patreon.com/RubeJelly. It's just going to be small details, small bits of like anti-advice, anti-common wisdom for folks to enjoy. We have that. We have upcoming videos on Stealth Archers, baby. Everybody's going to play your default class, your default character option is just going to be Stealth Archer. And everything else you pick is just going to increment penalties on your character until you never, until you go back and return to character defaults, which is Stealth Archer. So we're going to have a series on campaign diaries, and we're going to have a series on campaign advice. Illusion will be nerfed again and still be OP. Jeez. There's a game where illusions work vaguely as intended. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we're looking for new patrons, we're looking for new games, and yeah. So I think that's all I have. Do you folks have? Welcome to the end of the stream, folks. You can start talking about off-topic stuff if you'd like. Argue with me, yell at me for something dumb I've said, or that you think I've said either here or elsewhere. What have we got? Illusionist Archer. God, it was so annoying for Elder Scrolls that they were like. I remember searching for so long for like magic bows, like magic bow mods or spell bow mods, like stuff that you could. Because my first D&D character was a ranger, and I wanted to find spells that you could like cast on your weapon specifically. And back then, I couldn't find anything. I'm like, I just want like, I want to play D&D Skyrim. I just want to play. Listen, just give me a. I really just wanted um, Hail of Thorns in my Skyrim build, and I couldn't find it. Joshua Kanofsky says we'll be hitting the Patreon later this week. Hell yeah, I'm excited to hear it. Bunch of sending a bunch of goodies over to Durian, whom I love. So it really is cool. I don't talk about this often enough. Maybe when we hit 500, maybe I'll do a special stream or video for it. But it's been really neat. And I don't thank you guys enough for it. But it's so fun watching the same names and faces pop up to give their thoughts, comment, describe what they liked about stuff, like how it relates to their ongoing games. I like the beginnings of a community is so much fun. It's why I was attracted to the BrOSR over other gaming groups. Because it's cool. Like we're all doing something. We're doing something shared. Let's see here. Constantine says, in theory, nothing prevents me from taking the RPG pundits. Yeah, I'll drop it. Yeah, I should. Why didn't I already have? Thank you for reminding me. This is the other cool thing about patrons, about my viewers. Rube Kelly. They remind me when I failed to do when I failed to do something important. Okay, so Constantine asks, there's the link in there. Constantine asks, in theory, nothing prevents me from taking the RPG pundit system, like Lion and Dragon or Arrows of Indra or something like that, and start using it with a BrOSR mindset, right? The broad answer is yes. Yes, exactly like that. Patrons and patron accessories. So the broad answer is that you can do it. You can, in fact, use BrOSR style play with a lot of different games. You could use it with some new school games. You can use it with some sci-fi games. One of the products that we never had a little bit of a failure to launch in development, which is rare for me, was a Lancer BrOSR. Let's see here, BrOSR style game or BrOSR style module mission set for Lancer, where you would have access to map. The hope was to integrate their mass combat system, which is set in the same world but isn't really compatible with Lancer. It's called Lancer Battle Group. Um, oh, that's cute. Um, Lancer Battle Group is not compatible with the Lancer core game, but we wanted to change that and start getting you ships like you would in Traveler. Yeah, my D&D group from South Jersey is actually going to see the D&D movie tonight. Gosh, I wish I was with those guys right now. But yeah, so the short answer is you can use it. I think, in fact, one of my buddies from Aaron the Pedantic server, TK, is running a Lion and Dragon group called not called anything. Um it's Lion and Dragon group with patrons and with faction play, and I think with one-to-one time. And it's interesting. One of the things when I started writing a BrOSR FAQ ages ago, and maybe I'll do it. Maybe I'll get back to it and do it again. Maybe I'll use it as a video script. Because at this point, a lot of the same questions kept coming up. But one of them was, if you guys only endorse, or if you're all about AD&D First Edition Raw, why do you discuss? Why do you discuss games? Like, why do you discuss other games? Why do you discuss like Axe? Yeah, if it's the only game to play, why are you playing Axe? Well, AD&D's core books. This is the script. Okay, I'm gonna take a deep breath. My voice. I'm gonna use my voice. Okay. Isn't 1E Raw the only game to play? Why are you folks playing Axe? Our explanation was, if AD&D's core books are the only unambiguously endorsed set of RPG rules, They're the only rule set everyone in the BrOSR agrees encompasses the model of play that we endorse, but we never said that we don't play other games, right? If first edition raw is what we endorse, then why play anything else? And there's two answers. One is that playing other games with BrOSR principles tests to what degree these rules can be universally applied to role-playing games. Remember earlier I said that there are principles of game design that expand just past tabletop role-playing games. So there are principles of game design and that apply equally well to tabletop role-playing games and video games. Some of them apply more, or some of them are better applied to video games, and some of them are better applied to the tabletop role-playing games, but they usually come from the exact same place. They're usually sourced from the same principles. So I don't know why, and it's not an argument that you need to have with anybody outside of the OSR. But of course, those folks, it's not really productive to have arguments with those folks, anyways, right? So, one to one time would not have an effect on Let These Mermaids Touch Your Dick, maybe, but it might have an effect on 4th edition and Lancer. And if so, we would like to know how so. Our second explanation. Yes, this is, of course, this is my OSR Taliban manifesto. It's a lot more, it's less edgy nowadays that the Taliban is cool. What a shame. Our second explanation was that other games have different mechanics, which can be evaluated for compatibility with BrOSR principles and our preferred models of play. Here's the thing, there might actually be a better game than AD&D out there according to our principles, whether out there now or in the future. But so far, first edition is what we always come back to, and what everything else is compared against. And folks typically then objected with the idea that the BrOSR must not be cohesive if they're all playing different games, but believe it or not, experimenting with other rule sets to test compatibility is one of the most cohesion strengthening activities of our movement. We like testing, we don't like bubbles, and we can't help you out there. We never said that we don't play other games. When I test these principles in 5th edition, when I test mass combat out, when I test one-to-one time, when I test exploration principles and faction play, and it works out relatively similarly to how it would work in 1st edition, when I give the campaign the focus that we assume 1st edition should have in a different game like 5th edition, it confirms for us that, again, these principles are universal to some extent. They impact 5th edition a little differently than they impact 1st edition, and 5th edition does not ex nihilo generate these principles, but it does still work. That's going to be a fun clip. That's going to be a very fun clip. I wish I knew how to set up chapters that might only be a function of StreamYard. How unfortunate. But we got a bunch of comments here. I have a little bit of a thing in my throat, not because I'm getting sick, but because I stuck my. You know what? This is funnier without context. I stuck my hand into a mound of what were probably fire ants, and I have a mild hive reaction to it. 18 viewers. Why are there 18 viewers here? We're coming up on the end of the stream. Folks, if you want to ask me anything, now's the time. 19 viewers. Folks, start popping questions in the chat. Like what we talked about for the past hour and a half, for the past 2 hours. Okay, so AD&D is the only game that's consciously built on real play. Big agree, Jeffro. Man, James is so smart. That's very flattering. Zero appreciation for the OSR Taliban, though. Yeah, what a shame. Six of Sword asked, I want to try applying one-to-one time and faction play to World of Darkness and see if it fixes several of the problems in those games. That would be fascinating. That would be really, really fascinating to watch. I don't think anybody has attempted it yet. So you would be first up. If you wanted to do either Vampire the Masquerade or Wraith the Oblivion, I think that would be. I think that would be cool. I think everybody in this chat would cheer you on, and I would love to talk to you about it. Did strict time? Let's see here. Bradford Walker said, "I want to test." Oh, Reb One says LFG is that game, in my opinion, in my humble opinion. LFG, what do you mean about that? Or what do you? What's that? Is that looking for group? Let's see. Bradford Walker says, I do want to test a lot of stuff with other games. I think that it will improve every RPG I have on my shelf or hard drive. Yes. Yes, I really think it. Listen, I think it will. I think Lancer would be much cooler. Lancer has such interesting factions, like built into the. It's not even an implied setting, it's just setting when it comes to low fantasy gaming. There you go. Um, There's that again. I can't believe it crept back in. It's because my voice hurts. It's because my throat hurts now. Guys, damn it. And talking for long times. Yeah, I did. Yeah, Lancer has so many cool factions to it. It has so many baronies and corporations and kings and union representatives. Like, it's just chock full of factions. Who wouldn't want to play a traveler style game? Who wouldn't want to mix Traveler and Titanfall into one game with BrOSR principles? That'd be so much fun. One of the things I feel, Jeffro, we got to talk about that, about Trollopolis in space sometime. I think there's a little bit of scenario design that needs to happen there. And I actually don't think that Traveler is the right play there, but I think you could squeeze it. I think if you went more with Destiny style storytelling and scenario design, I think that everybody would want to get off the I think everybody would want to get out of the fantasy campaign or move from the I think everybody would want to get off the ship as quickly as possible so they could experience something new. Jeffro says it keeps many things moving such that many points of interest within the game become iteratively developed in conjunction with each other, which makes for a richer living world feel with very little effort. Yeah, there we go. Voice is extra getting screwed up. Ba 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 ba. Right about the LARPs? Yeah, there you go. Traveler is perfect for one-on-one time. Never got any takers for my space factions that I asked for. I never saw the. You should put that out again because I never saw that call for them, and I was surprised when you mentioned it. Players would go to space only if they could be John Carter. Well, yeah, there has to be gold in space. If we're playing an AD&D game, there has to be gold in space, and you should know this already. There needs to be loot and rewards in space. I was having an argument with some OSR folks earlier today that asked me, because I had an argument, as I often do, on Twitter uh, about magic items, and people asked, talking about how they should be more or less weekly or bi-weekly rewards. You should expect them pretty much. You should expect a reward every single week, and sometimes the rewards are cool enough that they tide you over for about a week or two, maybe even as much as 3 weeks. But you should still be expecting them pretty much every session or every couple of sessions. And somebody asked me, because this is a game, the magic items are not actually about character power. It's not actually about whether or not they've appropriately reached their. Oh, well, have they reached the certain damage thresholds yet so that we could keep playing the campaign? It has nothing to do with that. It has everything to do with we're playing a game. We're trying to enjoy ourselves. The thing that is best, yes, Spelljammer. The thing that is best for playing a game and for continued character investment, for continued player investment, is you're gonna find loot. It's just default expected. And somebody asked me, will you play? And I developed this opinion partially from the thread that I was criticizing, but also when I posted it in Aaron the Pedantic server, somebody asked me, "Well, you play 5th edition game. How does it work when you have characters which are mechanically complex already, right?" Or ooh, there you go. A court 5th edition characters are mechanically complex already. This game includes more mechanical complexity. This is more or less my own 5.5. Right? There's secondary classes, there are exploration mechanics, there's mass combat mechanics, there's extra spells, extra downtime activities. Because 5th edition doesn't do downtime, so I had to do it. Harvesting, tracking, looting, stuff like that. Fishing, foraging, and hunting, everything. So what do I give my players more magic items? And my explanation was yes, I give them even more magic items than I might normally recommend. You know? I give folks more magic items than I might normally recommend for a normal campaign. Because I'm playing 5th edition, because I already have mechanically complex players or characters. Because I think my constraint is that I have to keep them coming back week after week. There's nothing you can't get away with not giving the players rewards. It doesn't work. Like if they have a bad session, okay, if they have a bad session where they screwed up and they got nothing as a result, if the party wipes, that's not what I'm talking about here. I think all of you probably knew that already. All of you definitely knew that already, but just in case anybody wanders in, touch the sticky snail. Was there a flail snail? Yes, there are carousing rules. In fact, it's the first entry in... Just look up downtime. Oop. Yeah, there we go. Carousing. Very simple rules. Either, a thief makes off with some gold or some other valuable of yours. Thanks to their skills, you don't realize a non-gold item is missing until you try to use it. That's unfortunate. You lose standing with an important NPC in town. You get silver, you get rations, you get XP, owed favor. Yeah, there we go. And then there's a classier carousing option where instead of you make a check first to see if you get to roll, and then you roll. But all these events are good. So maybe you get nothing, but if you succeed on the check, you know that you're getting something good off the table. You're not risking anything over here. You'd be surprised how many people still go with the roll of the dice. But yeah. So I still give people a lot of magic items. Alright, folks. Any last questions? I'm getting ready to bounce here. Those of you who are waiting for the Seven Willows PDF, it looks like it's coming out tomorrow. I added a little section today about how to run it. Seven Willows, of course, is intended to be, you can play it alone, you can play it with other players, you can play it without a ref, but I figured that if I included a section for letting a referee know how to run it properly, that information that information would be pretty effective for anybody who was playing solo. For like, oh yeah, if I am playing solo, if I am creating my own encounters, this is probably what I should. Well, do you mean a European swallow or an African swallow? Red One asks, let's see here. Carousing the downtime complication table. Yeah, there you go. Perfect. Alrighty. Well, we had a bunch more viewers than we normally do, even live. That's pretty cool. Hell yeah, I'm pretty happy with this. We had a ton of chatters. That was pretty fun. Yeah, thank you guys kindly. I look forward to chatting with you folks soon. I can't believe we got a spike of people, right? Like past 8 p.m. Goofballs. Should have showed up for the campaign talk. Unbelievable. All right, but yeah, I'm gonna see you folks in Discord. Red One, it sounded like you wanted to be a patron. It sounded like Brigandine wanted to be a patron. You can do this in a very low time investment fashion, where sometimes I might ask you to respond to player characters if you're available, and then I'll ask you to move troops around the map, should you so desire. And that's the yeah. Cool, cool. Thank you for a great stream. Yeah, thank you. All right. Remember to share the channel with your friends. Visit the Patreon, patreon.com/gelatinousrube. A bunch of neat stuff coming down the pipe. Hell yeah. All right, folks. Peace. Perfect. Bye bye.